Welcome to this presentation titled How to Persuade and Influence Others. I'd like to start off with a saying my geometry teacher used all the time. There's more than one way to skin a cat. Now, this silly phrase basically is used to say that there's more than one way to do something. And that totally applies as we talk about persuasive communication, because there's different ways of persuading people, and each can be effective. The book outlines two main ways of persuasion: reasoning-based, which uses logical statements and examples and evidence, and values-based, which looks at common goals and ideas, and framing ideas in a certain way. Now, let's back up a little bit. What exactly is persuasion? Basically, persuasion is shaping perceptions or changing the way people think about certain things. This can often result in influencing people's behavior, which can be done by giving people good reasons to do something that they already might want to do, or giving them reasons to change their mind and act differently than they normally would. Persuasion can also be simply changing the way people feel about something. Basically, all advertising is a form of persuasion. This is a clip of a California milk advertisement with a cow singing in a shower. You may have seen it before. Basically, this form of persuasion is trying to get consumers to think favorably about California milk and hopefully influence them to buy more milk. It doesn't really give a whole lot of logical reasons, but it definitely is aimed at impacting the way people feel about milk. Well, I'm not going to show the video right now, but I highly recommend you look it up if you haven't yet. It's a cow singing in a shower. It's pretty great. Now, to effectively persuade others in writing, you should make a claim and clearly state your argument, what you're trying to prove. An example would be a claim that says genetically modified foods are beneficial in sustainably providing nutrition for a growing world population. This could be stated clearly in your introduction and then backed up with evidence or other forms of persuasion. One way to persuade is using an authority figure. Basically, important people or experts can make an argument seem more convincing. So a veterinarian says blah blah blah. Well, that might be really convincing in the case that you're talking about something related to veterinary science. So it's important that the expert that you're quoting is related to what you're talking about, and this can be an effective way of persuading people. Now, we should all be somewhat familiar with logos, pathos, and ethos, which have been around since Aristotle brought them up as ways to effectively persuade people, and specifically their origin is from talking or speaking in public, but these definitely are used in writing, which is how we will use them in this class. So logos is facts, numbers, and information, and we use this in the case of infographics, which provide a lot of statistics and logically appeal to people's senses that way. Pathos appeals to people's emotions. It gets people to feel happy or sad or angry in a way to try and influence their behavior. So an example of this might be like an HSUS commercial, which is trying to make people sad in order to influence their behavior. Ethos, that's all about you. It's a belief and trust in you and what you're saying. So this is important to establish your credibility, and to do that through writing, and this can be done in a couple different ways, which we'll talk about more. Now, Caros is one you might be less familiar with. Caros is basically saying this issue is so important, we need to act now. And this can be done with advertising, like, oh, this sale ends tomorrow, so buy now, or something like that. But it can also be used when we're talking about an issue such as global warming and showing the consequences of not changing our actions. So that would be Caros. It's more time sensitive. Research can also be a form of persuasion. Basically, credible research makes an argument seem more convincing, and citing sources, just seeing that sources are cited, helps add to your credibility and makes things more believable. So, for example, when you put together a nice infographic, it's appealing to people's logos with the logical approach here, but it's also going to be more convincing if your statistics are backed up and if they come from peer-reviewed studies or just studies done by what seem like credible sources. It's going to make your argument more convincing. Okay, so that's a brief overview of persuasion and the different ways that we can persuade others. And we'll go into now how important persuasion actually is, because it's everywhere and it's used a lot in agriculture or sometimes against agriculture. Now you may be familiar with the Chipotle video. If not, here it is. I'll pause real quick. Basically, what this video is a recent advertisement, for those of you who are less familiar, a recent advertisement from Chipotle that has gotten quite a bit of attention for the way that it aims to persuade people. I'm going to show this as an example so that we can answer some questions about how we can use persuasion effectively in communicating about agriculture. So I'll go ahead and let the video play, and then we'll have some questions to discuss.
Come with me and you'll be in a world of pure imagination. Take a look and you'll see into your imagination. We'll begin with the spin, traveling in a world of my creation. What we'll see will defy explanation. If you want to view paradise, simply look around and view it. Anything you want to, do it. Want to change the world, there's nothing to it. I know to compare with pure imagination. Living there, you'll be free if you truly wish to be. Simply look around and view it. Anything you want to, do it. Want to change the world, there's nothing to it.
Okay, so what'd you think? I have a few questions here I'd like you to take some time to answer so we can discuss them further in class. What persuasive strategies does Chipotle use in their Scarecrow ad? What I mean by this is, how is Chipotle using this ad to try to influence people's behaviors and perceptions? Another question, how could conventional agriculture use the same type of strategy in a way to influence their message rather than Chipotle's message? Also, think about what these messages actually are, what Chipotle is trying to say about conventional agriculture. And a third question for you, how do you think conventional agriculture should try to persuade consumers? Meaning, are some of these tactics ethical or effective when we try to use them as the agricultural industry? Take some time to think about these questions and prepare for our discussion about persuasive communication. That concludes this brief presentation, and see you in class.